I'm Melissa Sabatine, and today I'm one-on-one in the studio with the Honorable Robert Walker, Executive Chairman, Wexler & Walker Public Policy Associates. Congressman Walker possesses decades of political and public policy experience, including his tenure in the House of Representatives, where he represented Pennsylvania's 16th District for 20 years and served as the chairman of the House Science Committee. Known as the expert on House parliamentary procedures, Bob was the watchdog on the House floor, serving as Chief Deputy Whip and Chairman of the Republican leadership. He also is known for his expertise in aerospace issues. Back in 1996, he was the first sitting House member to be awarded NASA's highest honor, the Distinguished Service Medal. In 2001, he was appointed by President Bush to chair the Commission on the Future of the U.S. Aerospace Industry, which commemorates the 10th anniversary of its final report and findings this year. He's here today to talk to us about that and also to offer his thoughts on the recent federal elections. Hi, Bob. Thanks for being here.
Nice to be with you, Melissa. Thanks for the nice introduction.
And I guess in full disclosure, I should say that I worked with you in that commission, as well as
Absolutely.
you're my first boss in the House and a great mentor to me.
And
so it's a treat.
introduction sounded like what I made you write in those days.
I'm still working for you after all these years. Well, it's a treat to have you today. I think this is going to be fun. So back when the White House called you about the commission, and they said, we want you to look at the future of the aerospace industry, over, the next 10 years, and further and beyond, and what it's going to look like. And you have a year and a half to do it. What went through your mind?
Well, first of all, that it was an awful big assignment because aerospace encompasses so much. And as we got into the work, we began to realize just how much it encompasses. When you look at just the air side of it, you have all the technology, you have the questions of the industry itself, you have the questions of research and development, and then you put the space piece on top of that, and you have the same myriad of details. And so part of the work here was to sort out how it was we were going to approach all of those issues in a way that encompassed an overview of the industry and looked at it from a macro perspective as well as some of the micro issues that are important to the industry.
I remember that well. Let's talk a little bit about who was appointed to work with you as commissioners and kind of a little bit about who the staff was.
Well, it was really an interesting group of people because we had everybody from Bob Stevens, who of course is now CEO of Lockheed, but at that time was the president. We had Neil deGrasse Tyson, the preeminent person who in astrophysics. We had Buzz Aldrin with all of his experience. We had former deputy secretaries of the Defense Department. I mean, it was a really interesting group of people. And then the staff largely came out of experience inside the Defense Department. We worked as kind of an adjunct to the Defense Department, but we included at least one person from Capitol Hill with Capitol Hill experience. No, but we needed a policy blend along with people who had expertise. And so it was a fascinating group to try to pull together a lot of streams of thought into a final report.
Mm-hmm. So the final vision of the report, anyone, anything, anywhere, anytime. How did you come up with that?
Well, it was primarily the vision that we came up with as we worked through the whole question. We began to realize that what we wanted to do was set up a regime that assured that the access to aerospace was available to virtually everyone. We wanted to be able to move people and goods at the time that they were needed, recognizing that this was a world that was changing and becoming vastly more mobile. And we wanted to make certain that they could go anywhere they needed to go, including all ends of the earth, but also into outer space, because our outer space vision said that we needed to look at exploring the entire solar system. And so it was taking all of those thoughts and blending them together into something that we thought people could understand.
And what do you think were the most relevant recommendations of the commission?
Well, I think the most important recommendation we made was to advocate for the next-gen air traffic control system. And the reason for that was it blended all of the pieces of what we were dealing with. It blended the need for both defense and for civilian to have the most advanced air traffic control system in the world. It took all of the pieces of our vision and put them together, but because it was going to be space-based, we also had that piece of it in, and so that was an important recommendation. We also looked at the fact that the industry is more and more global, and so we looked at those things that could be done to assure that the United States was competitive in a global industry. We looked at many of the questions that impact how we do the aerospace business, both from the standpoint of airlines doing their business, but also manufacturers and everyone, because it was going to be a key element of the job production of the future. And so all of those are kind of blended into the report.
What kind of grade would you give Nextgen, 10 years later? Do you think it's progressing the way it should be?
Well, I think it's been underfunded. Therefore it has not moved ahead as aggressively as some of us might have hoped. I'm pleased that there is a recognition this is an extremely important part of our future. I mean, I think what the Commission did was defined it in a way that it made an important part of the agenda, and I see that playing out. I'm concerned that there has not necessarily been the kind of cooperation among the various agencies that we thought was important to accomplish this, that it's fallen primarily to FAA and to NASA to do at least the preliminary work. I think there still needs to be much more coordination inside the federal government to make this workable in the end. But the fact is that it has been prioritized, certainly within the Department of Transportation, and I think it does have a very bright future.
Great. Now, I remember we were traveling, we were over in Russia, and we were in Star City, and we saw some astronauts training, and you asked them who that was. And what did they say to you?
They told me it was the Chinese that were in training there, and as we have seen the Chinese program move forward, we begin to understand why they were training. Now, what we haven't seen yet is the kinds of things that they were training for at that time, and that is getting outside the spacecraft and doing assembly in orbit. It tells you a little bit about the ambitions of the Chinese program going forward, I think. And it's one of the reasons why we need to continue to try to learn a lot more about the Chinese program, because I think that they really are going to end up being competitive with us in the future.
And when you were Science Committee Chairman, you talked a lot about basic research, and then that's government's role is to invest in basic research, and that's where we get the big payoffs for our country and stay competitive. Are you at all concerned with the current economy, the situation in the economy, plus the political landscape of Congress, that we're losing the competitive edge a bit as a country?
Well, I am concerned that business and industry, because of the slowdown in the economy, has not investing as much in research as they used to. That's a trend that is bothersome. And it's in part because of the slowdown economy. It's also in part because basic research involves commitment to long-term programs that don't necessarily have a product at the end of them. And business is becoming more and more reluctant to invest in that kind of research. It's up to the government to do it, and you have to be concerned that as the government has gotten itself into a real fiscal mess, that one of the places that some people may want to cut will be those investments in research. I will say that I think the Obama administration has been sensitive to that and has made it very clear that that's a place where we need to be investing more, not less. I think if you're going to be a country at the leading edge of technology development, you have to be at the leading edge of basic research in order to get there. My friend Mario Andretti, the race car driver, one time said, if you're in control, you're not going fast enough. That's the world in which we live. What we see is that if you think you have your arms wrapped around a product, there's a new product coming out right after it that can make your product obsolete. We need basic research to assure that we're not only developing the next generation of technology, but we're looking ahead to future generations of technology that people haven't even thought about at the present time.
Well, switching to the private sector's role, you've long been an advocate for commercialization of space. Can you give us your thoughts on how the space industry is going to look in the next 5 to 10 years, given all the recent changes with the shuttle program?
Well, I think we are moving toward significantly more commercial development and the use of space by people who fly aboard commercial spacecraft. And that's come about because we now have 50 years of experience in space travel. And we've learned a lot over that period of time, and we've matured technologies that now commercial industry can adopt and adapt to a variety of usages. So you have companies like SpaceX who have now successfully flown cargo missions to the space station and are looking to put humans in. You have other companies like one that my firm works with, Sierra Nevada, that's developing a mini space shuttle that will be able to land at any airport in the world. And so you are beginning to see a development of the kinds of resources that will make space accessible to people. And as long as governments were the only way in which you got to space, it was not accessible to everyone. As you more and more commercialize it, it will make it more accessible, which means that there will be vastly more innovation and vastly more activity.
We're going to need to build some new runways for those space shuttles?
No, actually, the mini shuttle can land on most runways that are presently in place. And so one of the neat things about that would be that if you had astronauts coming back to Earth, you could actually land them at a city that has never seen the space program up close. You could bring them in. The astronauts could get out of the spacecraft there and hold a press conference in some Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, for example. And so it would add a new element to how we do space travel.
I like that. Okay, let's turn to politics. Okay, a couple days after the presidential election here. So what's your take on the Obama victory? A lot of people, most pundits thought it was going to be a little bit of a much closer race than it was.
Well, I think what we learned is that Obama was pretty good at putting together a significant coalition that consisted of minorities, consisted of single women, consisted of the traditional Democratic base. And whether or not that coalition can be put together by anybody else other than Barack Obama in the future is a question. But he did a successful job of it. And I think that their ability to define the Republican candidate as kind of an elitist and their ability to suggest that Republicans and conservatives are exclusionary in the policies that they put forward was a successful campaign for them. And unfortunately, what it was a very negative campaign. And so it literally, I think, drove people away from the polls, which negative campaigns tend to do. And then you have to have a massive get out the vote operation in order to take people who have only heard negativity and bring them in. I don't think the Republican get out the vote operation worked as well. In fact, it appears as though John McCain will have gotten more votes in 2008 than Mitt Romney got in 2012, if you look at just the raw vote totals. And that just suggests that people did stay away. That's disturbing. And I think that if we're going to be successful in the future, we have to have a far more visionary aspect to what we do.
Now, turning to your old stomping grounds, Congress, do you remember a time when there was a lame duck session where there was so much at stake? You know, the fiscal cliff, the dirty word in Washington that has to be dealt with when they come back into town.
Well, to quote former Governor John Engler of Michigan in something he said yesterday, that most lame duck sessions are pretty lame. And I think that there is a lot of truth to that. I suspect that there will be a lot of talk about finding solutions here, but in the end that they will not be able to come up with much more than kicking the can down the road a ways. I think that the issues are pretty complex. We're beginning to see the outlines of where a solution could rest. If in fact you are willing to talk about tax revenues rather than tax increases, you might find a place where we can find additional money to bring into the government. And the way you produce revenues is through tax reform. You simplify the tax code, you get rid of a lot of loopholes and deductions. You probably lower the tax rates themselves to accommodate for that. But the end result of that historically has been that you get a lot more revenue into the government. That's what we should be about. It shouldn't be trying to punish the rich or something like that by increasing their taxes but getting less revenue, which is, again, is the pattern of the past. It should be about getting revenue that can be used to buy down the deficit and ultimately keep us from having to accumulate more debt. And that's really the challenge. Now, the other part of that challenge is to do something about the entitlement programs that are eating us alive. And the good news is that in this election, there was a lot of talk about entitlement programs, and it didn't prove to be a factor in defeating candidates out there. That the idea that you can't talk about Medicare and Medicare reform without getting defeated, I think got pretty well scrapped in this election year. And so there are some places, I think, now where we can work toward reforms that will in fact help us meet the fiscal crisis that we're in.
When Speaker Boehner held his post-election press conference, he talked a lot about the tax revenue reform. So
right.
That's what he was talking about. Now, you worked in leadership for many, many years. What must be going through his mind right now as he tries to figure out how to build his coalitions and deal with all of the negotiations between the White House and also his colleagues in the Senate?
Well, I think he has to be pleased at the kinds of stands that the Republicans took in the House over the last few years, and particularly the last 2 years. Were successful in retaining the majority. The Republicans were not as successful in the Senate. In fact, we lost races that we should have won in the Senate. But in the House, while the majority is going to be narrowed some, he still has a pretty good working majority there. But he has to begin to think through, okay, how do we do this in a way that we achieve some success at the present time? And I think he has offered an olive branch to the administration at the present time to say, look, guys, let's talk about tax revenues. We will help you find additional money to come into the government to help pay down debt and deficit if, in fact, you will work with us on the tax reform side rather than simply talking about tax increases.
Now, turning to the Senate, what should Harry Reid's posture be right now?
Well, Harry's got a big job, and you know, he's got rules and regulations, if you will, in the Senate that make it kind of a dead end for a lot of legislation. He's got to figure out a way to work through that. But I think Harry's got to get away from the idea that none of his members should have to cast tough votes. Which is the reason why they haven't passed budgets for several years now. And that's a mistake. There was a Democrat a while back that said if you can't budget, you can't govern. That's absolutely true. And he has got to be doing something about assuring that they actually can move legislation through the body. Now, he's talked about changing the filibuster rules. I think that will cause a real war in the Senate and will make it even more difficult to pass legislation. But if in fact he gets the administration to begin to do its work, I mean, the administration basically ignored Congress for its first 4 years. And you've got to have a president who's willing to come up and spend political capital in order to get things done. I think if Harry can get that kind of cooperation with the administration, he can in fact begin to move things through the Senate. And I think that he will find some willing partners then in the House who are prepared to look at solutions that don't violate their principles, but do move us in a new direction.
We could probably talk politics all day, but I want to ask you one last question to kind of wrap things up. A lot of our members, they say to me, you know, what is going on in Washington? There's this lack of civility, lack of respect. And you spent many years on the Hill, and there was the partisan battles, certainly. But do you remember a time where it's been this bad?
Well, it's pretty toxic at the present time. But some people say, well, you know, it's just become more partisan and so on. Well, there's always been partisanship in the Congress, and we fought some tough battles back in the years that I was there. In my mind, what has made it particularly toxic is just the amounts of money that are necessary in the system at the present time. You've got huge sums of money being spent and huge sums of money being raised by members of Congress, who then feel beholden to some of the people who give them the money. That, in fact, then keeps you from moving toward compromise. Because the fact is, a lot of the people out there who give money don't want compromise. They want to continue to raise the money based upon their issue, and they don't like the idea that somebody would actually compromise. So I think we need some sort of a reform that assures that adequate money is in politics, but that it doesn't provide the toxic atmosphere that's now there.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you again for your time today,
Sure,
for being
nice to be
here
with you,
with us.
Melissa.
Great to see you.